Hi, today we're going to be working on a Razor motorcycle 350. It's a 350 watt, 24 volt motorcycle for kids, of course. And one of my friends gave it to me. I'm not sure if it actually worked when I got it, but maybe I just need new batteries. But in time I got it, sat outside for a little bit. The throttle isn't working, and I think that the controller got some water and it sits upside down. It's completely basically open, so the water probably got into it and cracked it. The switch isn't working. I've tested the switch doesn't work. Bypass that, it still doesn't turn on. So I'm just taking this stuff all out. The batteries are no good either. There's lead acid batteries, so I trimmed the cords off those. Those going. Yeah, just save the plugs if I need to. Taking the throttle control off, and this throttle is a off on, so it doesn't have any sort of give. And so my kid's only 4, so I want to give him a little bit of throttle control, so I'm gonna change that out to a potentiometer style. And of course, because I do everything kind of overkill, this bike doesn't have any suspension at all, so I've ordered a cheap front fork, and so that'll upgrade the front so it has a little bit of suspension. I'm going to put either some lithium ion or lithium phosphate, lithium ion or lithium iron phosphate batteries in. I have a little trouble trying to find some phosphate batteries that are the appropriate 24 volt. I brought it in the garage, so chain fell off on the ground, so it's obviously no good. So I'm going to put a new chain on it and see about cleaning up the bike. Or maybe even put a coat of paint on it. I mean, it's in pretty decent shape as it is, but just to snazz it up a little bit. I do have like I said, I got the new controller coming, throttle, potentiometer style, or however you want to call it, and then a new controller. So the new controller actually has a 500 watt output capacity, so it's going to be able to send the motor more power quicker. Overall, it should be a pretty good improvement to what it is. So I ordered a couple parts for it, and we'll wait for those to start showing up, and we'll start tossing them on. So I just got done cleaning the frame. I realized it's actually a powder coated frame, so I'm probably just going to leave it because I don't want to have to scuff it down, and powder coat is good protection, so it'll be good enough. I'm going to repaint the body. Like I said, all the stickers are peeling off, and it's just all sun faded. So I'm going to use some of this Duplicolor vinyl and fabric stuff. This stuff is really good on plastic. You gotta be careful actually when you use it. You don't want to get on anything else because it'll stain your hands and stick to anything that penetrates rather than just stick on top. So it's really good stuff for plastics. So I'll give it a coat of paint.
I got these Scotch Brite, gray Scotch Brite, and you know, rubbing alcohol, so now I'm just gonna give it a coat of paint.
So I've got the forks mounted, the battery showed up. I got to build, they're bigger than I thought they were going to be. I guess I looked at the measurements wrong. So I'm 3D printing a little plate here to support the batteries, then I'll make a frame to hold them in place. I got the forks. They're actually a little tighter in terms of the suspension. They're better than I thought they were from what I read online. But some things are a little disappointing, like the fact that they specifically called out the measurements for the center of these holes as being 12 millimeter, and it's basically 13. I got these little shock covers that go on here, and little hardware screws that come with them. I mean, literally don't even poke out the end of the plastic. So I don't know how you would expect that these are gonna hold the covers on. So that's kind of silly. So I got some new ones coming. I'm gonna drill this out to a solid 13 and put some nice metal bushings in it. I'm reading online people saying that they don't stay straight and collapse or whatever. And I think that's half the problem, is that they're not a standard size, and you're putting a 12 millimeter bolt into a 13 millimeter hole, and that's where you're gonna have problems with that. It's not gonna be able to add support. One thing I was actually kind of surprised about, I was just thinking that I was gonna strip out when they clamp down, but they actually did have a metal nut, if you want to call it, on the inside there. So when you tighten these clamps down, they actually have something going into it. I thought, oh, you really start reeking down on these to get them in to tighten on that aluminum. It's going to strip out the aluminum, but they got that metal bushing. I did put a longer bolt in. The factory Razor bolt is too short because it's you know, we have this 3/8 aluminum, whatever it is, that's bigger. Made a little bracket for the speed controller, and then when I wire up my lights and stuff, I got a relay box, and that's going to get mounted over here to have the fuses and everything into it. So kind of keep things tidy. The relay is going to take a converter that's going to drop the power down to the headlight and to the tail light down to a 12 volts. I've got a switch up here to run the lights. But it's getting there. And some of the, you know, I think the biggest problem is just that you're ordering Chinese parts. You know there's going to be problems. So everything you get, you got to do something with it to make it work. But starting to get there. So I just 3D printed these little wedges, and they sit right down inside here like that. And then the batteries sit right on them perfectly, and keep the batteries are nice and flat on the bottom and supported. So I don't have to worry about them breaking when I'm going down the track or the road, whatever, trail. Put a strap around them or something. And then obviously the cases will hold them in place too. So I got the front forks on, and I'm gonna put the front wheel on, but the front wheel isn't quite, the axle stud isn't quite long enough. So I do have a new axle for the front. One of the other problems is that the diameter isn't right, and like I said before, this isn't a true 13 millimeter like it's supposed to be in the, or 12 millimeter like it's supposed to be in the ad. It's like 12.75. So I was gonna drill that out to get it to be a true 13. I did order some bushings to go in there, but I'm a little impatient. So what I'm gonna do is just turn down a piece of aluminum and then I'll replace it with the bushings later, or keep this depending on how I feel on it. So this is going to go in. I'm going to machine these down 13 outside, 10 inside, and make some bushings to go in here. So of course running into more problems, and I didn't do the figuring quite right. That's a fine thread factory axle, and this is a coarse nut, a coarse thread. And then I tried to tap out the factory bearing race to the coarser thread, and it broke apart the metal, so probably a little piece of hardened metal. Anyways, I end up machining some new ones. I took a chunk of stainless bolt, and I machined new races. I just so I carved up this piece of cutting tool, and that gives me my the radius I need for my bearing race. So now I can set my bearing races in here. Because this isn't a full thread, I'm gonna need to clamp it between the bars. I'm gonna clamp it between the bars of the forks. It's not that big of a deal right now, but I definitely wanted to upgrade to a front wheel that had a brake option. So it's just temporary just to get it running. I'll order a new wheel. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing it quite so like this with no bearing seal and everything. So it'll work for now. I'll get the wheel on, and then I'll order a new front wheel that actually has the brake option. So I've got the shaft in with the 13 millimeter outside, 10 millimeter inside diameter spacers. Keeps it all nice and lined. Tire rolls good. The only problem, I'm thinking that there's nothing really holding these from going in. So I made these little 17 millimeter wide spacers that go over the 13. So I couldn't make this one piece because of the way this whole thing aligns, but this will allow me to tighten down on these, and they aren't going to go in. And I think one of the complaints about these things is that they shock, so that there's so much slop in here, and when you put it on a regular axle, they doesn't lock them in together, and so one tire might go up, one side of the tire might go up a little bit before the other one, or they don't stay straight. But having these longer spacers in here that are tight on this and the full length, that gives it a lot more stability. And so I don't think there's going to be any problem with this tire being like going up at a going crooked or anything. So I'm going to toss these spacers in, and that'll make it pretty well good to go. So now I've made put those spacers in. That keeps the fork from squeezing together. Still rolls really nice and stable. So I think the front fork is done. Now I'm going to see about maybe swapping out to the larger motor that goes in it. So I made this motor mount adapter plate to run the bigger motor. It's two-part. The motor is longer, the bigger motor is longer, so this gives me the room to go above this swing arm, and then also it does the new pattern. Wish I had just a slightly bigger piece of metal, or figured out the alignment better, but it works. So I've got the two tapped holes. This is for the big motor, and this is for the factory bike frame mounting points. So I'll start screwing this on. So I've got the motor mounted on my adapter plate. Probably could take a link out of this, but I'll let it stretch out first. I got the batteries mounted. I still need to get a good strap to hold them. I'm looking for some of my long zip ties, and I can't find them right now, but I'm gonna seal these up so they don't fall off. Did some working on the wiring. So this was coming up. It said it was an indicator, but it works well for if I turn this on, it works well for my headlight I have that going through a switch, but also on the battery. So if it's left on, when the key goes off, it turns off there. This is the throttle. I did connect, this is the brake light, but I'm having trouble with my brake light. It's a little too much ground signal, or there's a bad LED or some system or whatever, so I have to change that. And then I've got a brake input through this one. So I changed some of these plugs off my old harness, but it's all connected. I installed my charging port on the outside, so now I'm just going to turn it on. Give me my battery voltage. Variable speed throttle. So I'm just gonna put the body on it now. So I got the motor covers on. I just had to space it out a little bit with these 1/4 point nuts just to give some spacing to give room for the battery. The battery held it nice and tight in there. This one's coming together. I was supposed to put a bolt through that one as well. It's a little bit of a gap, but not too bad. All the wires are about where they need to be. So I'm gonna put the rest of the body on now. Just give it a little bit of throttle. Why not? What are you gonna give it? So it's pretty well completed now. Still have a minor touch up to do. I have to mount the front fender. I'm gonna order a coupling nut and bolt this onto here. It's just a little too high based on the way it was mounted before. So I'll just put a coupling nut on here and then put another nut in the bottom, hold that right on there. Goes pretty good. I wanted to have something that wasn't too fast because he's never rode one of these before. I'll probably build a newer one with an MX350 chassis when he gets a little more experienced. Put the chain guards on. I did have to make an extension because the motor is mounted up higher. Pretty simple. Just put a little aluminum spacer in there. Paint's peeling off in a couple spots already. So he already managed to crash it because he refuses to use the brakes. But everything held up pretty good. He drove it pretty well full speed into my shed. But yeah, goes good. He likes riding it, and it'll be a good way to get him going on riding bikes.